So tonight we are going to go on with the training of Safe Sanctuary. That is a mandatory training. Anybody working with kids at this church need to take. There are also some videos on the Foursquare public website that are needed to be watched by everybody. And this is for the safety and protection of our children, be they young or old, and for vulnerable adults. Why Safe Sanctuary? First time. Why do we need training? Well, there are some good quotes from Jack Hayford. If any of you know that, he was one of the big wigs in Foursquare, especially in the 80s and 90s. And he says, let's not take lightly the stewardship and care of our children and youth. We're not taking that lightly. The Virginia superintendent says this is the standard, not suggestions and good ideas. This is the way that we want it to be. They're not just good ideas, they're the things that we want to implement. We think it won't happen, but why not be proactive? We don't want it to happen, but knowledge is power, and we're going to go with the knowledge. The CDC states the #1 way we can prevent such acts is to raise awareness and commitment. So that's what we're here for tonight. The Child and Protection Manual that we have that are in every single of the children's rooms in a yellow folder like this. If you ever really can't sleep at night and you want to read something, there you go, right there. Nice thick thing with all the information that we have, all the protocols that Foursquare has for us to go by. In that manual it says, we are committed to creating a safe, nurturing environment that fosters spiritual, emotional, physical health for all children who participate in our ministries. We're also committed to protecting staff members and volunteers from unwarranted accusations. Now I would say that that is the 90%. Because in this crazy world, we're protecting you even more than we're protecting the children. We're not going to let an unwarranted accusation come against you. And in this crazy world, unfortunately, that's what it is. But also a fact that 1 in 7 children have experienced abuse in the last year. To me, that's a crazy amount, huge number, 1 in 7 kids. That's 2 people out of this room. You know, well, maybe not quite. 1.5 people out of this room. But it's a sad circumstance and a sad state of affairs. Oh, isn't she cute? One child abuser was noted by saying this: I consider church people easy to fool. They have a trust that comes from being Christians. They tend to be better folks all around and seem to want to believe in the good that exists in people. Now, that's why he came and prayed in churches. Prayed among young people. Yeah, P-R-E, yeah. Because they were easy to fool. And I would say a lot of us are very trusting. We want to believe the best in people. And so if we haven't prayed for discernment involving children's ministries, then we shouldn't really be involved, because we need to have that discernment about people. When we put people in roles of leadership, I strongly believe that it's important to pray about the person for a long time. And sometimes I get a check in my spirit and I just say, honey, I'm not sure I want to go that direction with this person. Of course, I'm also under leadership, so if my leadership tells me that I go with that person, then I do that. But I do sometimes get checks about people, and unfortunately, most of the time they're correct. So I have learned to heed that little thing that whispers to me. Okay, fact or fiction? What do you think? Sexual offenders have limited access to children.
Fiction.
Yeah, they have lots of access to children, usually. They put themselves in a role where they will have access to children. Sexual offenders look like the average person.
Yeah.
What? They don't walk around with a trench coat and dark glasses? No, they look just like you and me. Sexual offenders are usually unmarried loners, people on the outskirts, right?
Not necessarily.
Unfortunately, they're usually married and have families, which is really frightening. Sexual offenders are people that you don't know.
Nope.
False also. Sexual offenders create, foster, and then maintain a relationship with your child.
True.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, there are really good-hearted people that also foster and maintain a good relationship with your child, like me, or like Mark, or like Kim, who just really care about your children. So discernment is the key there. Sexual offenders are pedophiles. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Could be.
They probably are married, so they probably have a normal relationship as well. Sexual offenders are psychotic.
Not usually.
Well, in my opinion, they are, but
Yeah.
they don't look or act psychotic. Sexual offenders are not obviously creepy.
True.
Are not. Sexual offenders are overwhelmingly identified as religious. This is so sad. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many people who I would say are psychotic and identify as religious. So, you all got this lovely quiz on your chairs, and most of these questions come from the 4 videos that are on the Foursquare website. What I'm going to have you do is just turn to each other. I mean, don't yell at each other because you don't want to spew anything into the air. But just in smaller groups like this, I want you to take about 8 minutes and go over these questions and answer them as a group, in a group setting. So if you want to pause the camera, at this point, you would take the document of Child and Youth Protection quiz and review it.
You always have to have somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did y'all do on the quiz compared to the answers? If you had a different one than what's up here, can you let me know so that I can clarify it a little bit maybe? Or-
If you got 100%, your pay, your volunteer pay will be doubled from now on. Okay?
The one we had the most problems with was 9.
9. So let's take a look at 9.
Yeah.
The largest group of victims of maltreatment is aged 3 and under, and that is because they really have no way of communicating well the fact that they're being maltreated. They don't know how to express it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Anything else that there was any confusion or
And number 6, we had confusion on that one.
number 6?
Yeah, we did, yeah. That
Our
was our other.
first priority is for people to experience the protection, grace, and something offered by God in their lives. And the video, this question is directly from the video, and you'll notice that they say wholeness. We want the wholeness of God. Because wholeness kind of is everything together. Any other questions or comments? 15.
Yeah.
The most important step that we can take, well, just because we're spiritual people,
Yeah.
right? Hopefully, that is the first step and the most important step that we can possibly do, which is to pray. Yes?
Well,
The world probably says a different answer, but
should
for
we
us.
learn about it and then pray for it so we know what we're praying for?
Well, you know, that's a good question, and yes, you could do that, but I think sometimes God tells us to pray for things that we don't really understand at all. And I think it's okay to pray to God about things that we may have no understanding about at all, but that's a good observation. Thank you, Robert. Anything else? I don't know about you guys, but I'm like freezing. So, honey, either turn it up or give me a jacket, please.
We're going to have to suffer and sweat.
Okay, so, limiting access, privacy, and control. Now, this is a big thing in the videos, and they discuss it for a long time. I want you to think about how can we limit access to children by predators? How can we avoid areas where they might have the avoid them having control over a situation. So just talk amongst yourselves and maybe throw a couple brainstorm ideas out. How can we limit access, privacy, and control to predators?
Are we talking about in the church or just in general?
In the church or in general, yeah. I'd like to hear your opinions about that. And then we'll specifically look at the church building for this too. But how do you think? What do you think, Robert? How can we keep a bad guy from having any kind of access to people, to little kids?
When I was
Always.
in Federal Way at the
Like,
Northwest Foursquare,
if I was a grown-up, I would
They
always stay
built
with my
a
child.
that was just for,
And
Our
when I'm out
preschoolers
the
and
way and
nursery,
I
they
have a
were the ones
babysitter
that
over, I put cameras
had
all
a
over and stuff
picture
like that.
Cameras are probably a good bet, yeah.
And I would actually put a sign saying,
so that,
I have
and there
cameras,
was-
Oh,
stuff like that.
even if you don't have cameras, you could put up signs that say, I have cameras, right? And that might
especially
dissuade
for
them.
our little guys.
Yeah, those are all really good ideas. What about here in the building? What could we do that
What's
might
that?
help?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They should not be alone.
How many,
They shouldn't.
I'll tell you what my
bathroom
biggest
alone.
issue is, taking little kids to the bathroom, these preschoolers that, you know, some of them are barely potty trained, and a lot of them, quote, need help wiping, and you go like, I don't want to have to touch their little bottoms.
Right.
And this could be, to me, that's like a really big danger area.
It is a super big danger area, and in this church, we have a bathroom policy that most people should know, and that's why we got the little toilet seat in the ladies' big stall, because we want children to be able to bathroom themselves. During a service, if we have a young child and their parent is here, it was always hard for Awana. It was always difficult to call for Awana. But if their parent is here, we call the parent to potty them. If the parent is not here, in the case of Awana, then there are two people watching each other. And that's why Nan was always out here, just there, because she was there to watch the kids go in and out of the bathroom and make sure that they had somebody monitoring, a second set of eyes.
And she waited at the door.
Yeah.
Another thing we did, especially with those littles, is we had baby wipes, so they could do it themselves. They might not be as clean, but at least they're using something to wash versus just wipe.
Yeah, we could feasibly do that, but our policy is pretty much you do not go into the stall
Oh,
with a
no,
child.
absolutely. Sometimes we would leave it, well, we had the place where we did this, it was at Northwest. We had a half door, and you just keep the top of it open. And we had the floor-sized potty.
Yeah, I love that. I love
This low.
child-specific bathrooms. Those
Yeah.
are really, really helpful in this kind of situation, because I would say number one, difficult area,
Yes.
tricky area, but at this church, our policy right now is such that we don't even diaper other people's babies.
Yep.
And I think that's a little bit overboard, because you've got two people in the nursery
Yep.
right there next to each other, so we might be revisiting some of our bathroom procedures. But as far as not going in with a child, not wiping them,
No.
period. Yeah.
That's why we use the
Occasionally
wipes.
helping them button, because a lot of the kids, they can take care of the bathrooming part, but they can't button their pants again, so they come out to the public area and you button them, but hopefully they pull their panties up. Yeah, I would say, yeah, number one tricky spot. Any other ideas about limiting access, privacy, or control by predators? Okay, I'm going to show you.
Well, I mean, you certainly don't allow one adult to have one child off by, or like maybe more, but certainly a one-on-one thing away from any other, person observing what's going on.
That's right. We have, at this church, we have a 2D policy, which is why there's always two people in the classroom, and why we're always asking for more volunteers, even if they're just going to be there at the second set of eyes. We just need that second set of eyes. Right now, because of COVID, we are going to open up one classroom for children, and we decided the best option would be for the pre-Ks, but we will allow any child who doesn't feel they can sit through service to come in and be with us. But part of the reason is that we didn't have enough volunteers to have 2 deep in every single room. And part of the reason is that right now, I don't feel comfortable having another adult hold somebody else's baby. I just don't feel comfortable with that until we get a better handle on the contagion.
In Awana, I always have 2 adult leaders. And
So this is
no
our
apologies.
building, and if you look at the schematics of our building, there are some places where there is more ability for privacy. And so oftentimes, if I'm here and a lot of people are here, or even if there are a few people, if I hear people, I will go in the rooms and I'll peek around corners, I'll look behind doors. In my opinion, the worst part of our entire building is this part of our second story, and if this door is left open. I do not like the fact that this door is left open, because that's a great place for privacy. Nobody goes up there unless the clothing people are here. So the other places in the building that are often overlooked or a concern to me is this closet. We did get a new lock, but it doesn't always work. This closet also, and then any of the offices.
And the cave.
Oh yeah, the cave over here.
Right.
So there are certain areas of our sanctuary that it's just good if you happen to be in that part of the building to take a look. And if everybody knows that everybody's looking, then the possibility of anything bad happening is very minimal. So if all of us do our part, basically, by keeping our eyes open and looking around, then we won't have any issue. It's important to know your surroundings and what's going on. Okay, so another document that we have to read through is appropriate touch document and discussions. So I'm going to ask different people so you don't have to listen to my voice droning on and on. Everybody's going to get to read part of this. Isn't that exciting? It's just one of those things. Can I have a volunteer for the first slide? Okay, Rob, go ahead.
EFC, where do you want me to start?
Just firmly believing.
Firmly believing that children and youth need loving and a meaningful touch. We ask that wisdom and discretion be used when showing physical affection. The privacy of a child or a youth should be respected at all times, except to the extent of health and safety concerns. The following list consists of behaviors that should never be done while caring for children, youth in our classrooms events: picking up a child over 3 years of age, tickling or grabbing any child even in a playful way, lap sitting over 3 years of age, touching a child under their clothing, removing clothing of a child unless for removing outerwear such as a winter coat.
Okay, so these are hard sometimes because children love to be played with. Children love to be tickled and grabbed. They put themselves in a position to have that. They need to have that at their own homes and not here. We need to find ways of engaging them and loving them without so much physical touch. Also picking up, we discourage picking up over 3 years of age. A lot of times a really good way to deal with that is you're sitting on the floor with the kids, they want to sit on your lap or something, and you just kind of scoot them over here and put them right here and put your arm around them. You know, oh, that's okay, why don't you just be right here? You can be close, but not on my lap. And children under the age of 3 need that physical touch. even beyond that. Every child needs some physical contact, but we need to do it appropriately. Who wants to read this one? Okay, Vicki.
The following procedures have been established to provide additional security to those who may be vulnerable to abuse. Background checks. All volunteers over the age of 14 must submit a background check. 2D. No less than 2 background check volunteers are required with children, youth at all times. This includes but is not limited to classrooms, transportation, and special events. No one-on-one contact. One-on-one contact is not permitted between volunteers and children/youth. Any meeting or discussion on private matters or sensitive issues must be conducted in view of other adults or public venue like Starbucks. And a member of children/youth ministry staff should be informed and actively involved. For child/youth 6th grade and up, should only receive individual ministry by leaders of the same sex. This is to protect the emotional health of the student.
Now, some of these things you might raise an eyebrow or say question. We already talked about 2D. Background checks is a given, which we're doing all online, and most of us are due for a fresh background check. So if you haven't had a background check in the last 2 years, it's a every other year thing, and you will be getting an email about that. The one-on-one contact, obviously, we're going to have in full view of everybody, so we're not in a closet or cloistered someplace. These rooms are great because you can have a private discussion right there in front of the window and nobody can hear you because you're in full view of everybody, you have privacy, but, and then youth ministry is always tougher than children's ministry because in children's ministry we have a majority of just women ministering to the youth, and in youth ministry we have to avoid the male person being alone with a female person. That's generally what causes problems in the long run because a lot of times the young ladies fall in love with their youth leader and that can always be a sticky situation. So, who wants to read this one?
I'll read it.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Appropriate touch for children under 6 years of age. We realize that children under the age of 6 require a different level of care, which may include holding and hugging of the child. We ask that you use discretion at all times and that the 2 deep rule is always followed. Appropriate touch for children and youth 6 to 17 years of age. Touching their hand to comfort, pat on the back, upper back only, side hugs, high fives.
Okay, what does that look like? It's okay. Well, I do fist bumps because it's gross, but elbow bumps these days, right?
Yeah.
Side hugs. This one's tricky because sometimes you've got a teenage girl and she is blubbering all over, and what are you going to do? So if she wants a full hug, you move her over here a little bit. It's just tricky, you know, even if it's same sex, because in today's crazy world that doesn't matter anymore. But trying not to have full body contact, trying to push them over to the side is kind of important. But it's hard because if I come to Vicki and I'm bawling my eyes out, she's going to give me a hug.
Yeah.
You know, but we have to worry about it and treat the kids a little bit differently. This is a great website if you really want to find out about child abuse. Netgrace.org has some super videos. Yeah,
Are we gonna keep these so I can like write on that?
absolutely.
Okay.
If it's your own child or a grandchild
Oh, yeah.
and you're at church,
Oh, no.
should you be following this, or is it okay if they're crying to give them a,
Yes.
oh, thank you.
This is your own child.
I better
This is your
clarify
own
that.
grandchild. Absolutely. That is a totally different
But I thought
category.
maybe we should be just showing what we should be doing if it's somebody else's or, okay.
Yeah, that's true too, because if I didn't know you, I wouldn't know that that was your grandchild, right? Like, it took me forever to know that Jesus was your grandchild. But there are situations like that, and of course, we choose how we deal with our own children and our own family.
Don't you think for, when it says youth 6 to 17, don't you think if youth come up for prayer, that you need to ask their permission to touch?
You know what? It's always good to ask permission. I don't think about that when I'm in the classroom, because I'm a very engaging teacher. I like go up to you and I'll talk to you right in the face like that, or something. But it's true. If a child comes up for prayer, just like we would for an adult, is it okay if I put my hands on you and pray for you? Because I would never. I don't think I've ever prayed for an adult where I didn't ask first. And you're right, because they might feel violated if you just went to lay your hands on them without. Good question, Sandy, thank
And
you.
you really don't want to touch them anyway.
Right now, we don't want to touch anybody, but, you know, like at 360, I would totally go and touch Kim's back and pray for her. I don't think I'm going to get COVID if I do that. Okay, I hugged Vicki today at Bible study. I hugged Linda today at Bible study. I can't help myself. And they were totally complicit in this. It's fun. Okay, so breakout group scenarios, what do I have for this? Oh, scenarios, okay. That's the next slide. So we have several different scenarios on this. And how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You two take the first one, and you ladies take Violet, age 11.
Okay.
I'm going to have, yeah, you guys do Bryce, and Sally is the trickiest one. I'm giving it to you guys. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
So talk about it, come to a consensus, and then I want to get your opinions.
First consensus, I can't even read it.
Guys, come on. Channing's dad has never had much to say when it comes to the program. He seems very guarded and private. When you ask children to bring pictures of home for a project, Channing's dad gets very upset that you are violating the family's privacy. Channing says he's not allowed to work on the project or talk about his family.
Is Channing a girl or a boy?
It could be either.
Well,
It says he, so.
When he comes to the program.
so Channing's dad's probably doing something and he's guilty about it. And as Channing probably saw him or knows about it, and Channing's dad knows that Channing knows about whatever he was doing. And Channing was totally silent.
Okay, that is one possibility, and a lot of times our minds will race to that. But it also could be that Channing's dad just doesn't want his son's picture pushed all over the internet. So we have to allow them the privacy. I would not go reporting them for that particular situation.
I will actually find out more information.
Yeah, you might want to ask some questions and ask more information, because I know that when our kids were little, Mark did not sign any of the consent forms to allow their picture to be on the internet. That's
Wise
just-
beyond your years, where you go?
Violet, age 11, is having a hard time walking. When she sits down, she acts like it hurts. You ask her what's wrong, she says nothing. A few days later, she's playing soccer with other children. She rolls up her pants, stretches on the ground, and when she gets warm, you notice dark purple bruises on her inner thighs. She seems to remember the bruises and rolls her pant legs back down.
I would report it to the next step in authority. I'm a mandated reporter. I've been a mandated reporter for years. That's suspected abuse. And it doesn't have to be proven. It just has to be suspected. Yep.
And that's, the qualifier is that it's on the soft tissue.
Soft tissue,
It's
yeah.
on the inside of her thighs. So it's different than if I fell down and I bruised my shins,
Sure.
or I got bruises on my elbows or arms from falling. you wouldn't normally get bruises here for no reason. Bryce has been out of the program for a few days. His parents called to report him sick on his first day back. You notice fading bruises on various parts of his body.
You go ahead.
Well, the first thing we decided was that we would probably go to the next person above us, just because you don't know. But you don't want to just approach. I think it's always good to find out, hey, you okay, what happened? But with fading bruises and that, you just want to protect them.
Yeah.
And again, being a mandated reporter, which I think even in this situation we should be, because we're here to protect these.
You as a volunteer, are not necessarily a mandated reporter. Steve absolutely is,
Yep.
and so if I brought something to him, he would have to report it.
Right.
Mark absolutely is, Vicki absolutely is. There are certain people who are in that situation. Tabitha, who is our person that you actually bring these things to,
Oh, okay.
is also. So if you have anything like that, even if it's just a question, then you can go to Tabitha has an email that gets sent to her called safesanctuary.org for Foursquare Church, and that's later in this presentation too. And you just type her an email, and then she's obligated to investigate it. Do not ask the kid a bunch of questions, because it can lead them into saying things that they may have not actually had happen. So you don't want to necessarily investigate it yourself, because you might put thoughts or ideas into their head that
Yeah.
are erroneous or untrue. Okay, Sally, this was a conundrum in the last group that we had. Sally comes to youth group for the first time. She's overly friendly to everyone and seems to put up with disrespectful behavior from the group members. Some of the girls are whispering about her in the background. When you approach Sally to talk and try about the situation, she's less than forthcoming.
Well, when we were talking about it, I mean, you got several moving parts in this one. The first one is, and you're right, it is a bit of a conundrum, because certainly the touch that we've talked about among us with kids is one thing. If kids are initiating with other kids, is there a policy other than personal space they have for themselves that we can or should be enforcing? We thought it would be nice to take her aside and say, might be with two leaders out of view, not out of view, but out of line of earshot of what's going on, say, we appreciate you being here. Obviously, you're quite enthusiastic. You might want to, we would like to suggest that maybe that you, especially if she's exhibiting this behavior to leaders, that needs to somehow be addressed there. The girls gossiping or whoever, they also need to be addressed by leaders too, saying, this is not right,
Right.
okay?
What is overly friendly?
Well, you know how some people are really insecure, and so they want to,
Clean, clean, clean?
yeah, they want to please you because they may not have any friends, or they don't know how to socially interact, and so they'll just be a little overboard about everything. And so it could be some kind of mental issue. It could be that she has a problem with rejection in the past. It could be that she has very low self-esteem. I mean, there are hundreds of reasons, and I would definitely, pray for Sally before I address her on that issue. I think I would first step in and address the kids that I know that shouldn't be talking and should know better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what I was thinking too. First of all, it raised my hackles, and I think, how dare they?
Yeah.
You know, how did you
Because
know
we've
right
all
away?
experienced the rejection of other teenage girls, and teenage girls are, gee, I don't.
Well,
Yeah.
Isn't it
but you can look at that
great
two
for
ways
the
too. Are
first
they
time?
react?
I'm sorry, just a minute. Rob, could you repeat that, please?
I was just gonna say, that leaves a little something to be in the haze there. Are they reacting specifically to her behavior that night? Or
Or do
is,
they know her from
or do they
school?
know her from schools?
Yeah.
So what dynamic is in play? And then the other thing we also thought would be, if you talk to her, she really is not gonna come forth. That might be one of those cases you talk about here, where you get a couple leaders say, hey, you know, do you hear that Starbucks is open? Can we meet you? And maybe talk to her in a setting away,
Yeah.
and get her out of this dynamic and try to maybe at some point kind of figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sandy, what did you have?
I would just say, if she's coming to a youth group for the first time, maybe not ever having been in a youth group before, she should have a little bit of grace.
Absolutely. She doesn't know how, she's in a strange situation. She doesn't know how she's expected to act or react. She, you know, my first thought is that she's been rejected by her peers in the past. I think most of the people who act like that have some issues. And our job is to reach out to those kids, not gossip about them. And, you know, I'm always for, let's make the kids that we know act like Christians while they're at church, you know? So, good scenarios. Thank you for your input on that.
And what about that last one?
Oh, do you want to go ahead and discuss it?
Yeah, Jesse?
8-year-old Jesse sits down at a desk in your classroom. You notice he's trying not to cry. When you ask him what's wrong, he tells you his dad gave him a whooping last night. You ask him what a whooping is, and he says it's when his dad hits him for being bad. When you ask, he says he was hit on his butt, that it doesn't hurt to sit down, that the bad thing he did was push his 4-year-old sister down. Jesse says his dad told him to apologize to his sister, and he did, and his dad was happy he did, but sometimes he still feels sad when he thinks about it. In this state, it's still on the books that we can spank our kids with our bare hand. May that never change.
On the hiney?
On the hiney. And it sounds like his daddy did just that. Sounded like a corrective issue.
And it doesn't sound that it's beating like to injure the child, but it's as much his spirit. His spirit was injured possibly because of the punishment, but also because he recognizes that what he did was wrong. So how much of that is, you know, I would say, depending on how much of a whooping is, that he probably, I wouldn't get too worried about that. You know, especially if you see that generally, you know the family, and you know that the relationships in the family generally are good and solid. If the kids acted like they needed to get away from their father, they were afraid of him, different issue.
But would you almost want to ask if he wanted to pray about it in order to find forgiveness within himself for what he did?
I think that's a great idea, Kim. Yeah, we could totally.
Because, I mean, if
do
he's
that.
so upset about it that he's, you know, struggling not to cry, sometimes, like you say, it's more, you know, self-forgiveness for what he did, and, you know, and letting him know that God forgives him too if he asks.
Right.
And,
Still feel sad.
of course he would, but see, God can help him with that.
As long as we don't intimate in any way that his father was wrong in that
Oh,
situation.
no.
Yeah.
I just think more of the forgiveness for what he did, not what his dad did, but his own actions.
Yeah, I think that's a great consideration. Always right to pray, right? Always. Okay, this is another document that I get to help me read, so be ready to be called upon. Who wants to read the first page? Okay, Jeff.
Ellensburg Foursquare Church puts a high priority on the nurturing of children and youth. We acknowledge that an important part of nurturing it is protecting those that are most vulnerable. For this reason, we have implemented the following policies. All volunteers and paid employees of Ellensburg Foursquare Church must have a background check on file. There are no exceptions to this rule. Volunteers are presumed to be trusted no matter what ministry they're involved in, which in all assumptions makes them a trusted adult. We abide by a 2D rule with all children and youth under the age of 18. This means that there must always be at least 2 approved volunteers with any child/youth. This includes on-campus and off-campus events, including transportation.
Transportation is always the hardest one, and if you are in transporting children, you always want to leave the brother and sister till last, because if you have to drive them by yourself, then you've got 2 other kids in the car together instead of you and just one other person. Otherwise, you should have 2 adults in the car, and hopefully not married. It's better if they aren't married adults in the car with the one child. This has always been an issue. When I taught at the high school, it was my policy, because sometimes we get out late at night, and I was not going to leave a young person there at the high school all alone, sitting outside waiting for their parent. And so sometimes I had to wait half hour, 45 minutes beyond the time, because they didn't have anybody come and pick them up. If one of my daughters was involved in the production, then I could invite them to come and sit in the car if it was cold. But if there was no other person there, I had to just sit in my car and watch them until their family came and picked them up, because that was, I felt, appropriate. I don't believe that everybody follows those same kind of rules, but for me, I wanted to make sure I was above board on all of that. And so sometimes, if you're a youth leader and you have an event, it's my personal opinion that you wait appropriately until every single child gets picked up, and you don't leave until every child has been picked up. I believe that that's the right response.
Hopefully you will not be left alone with one strangler child for a long period of time
Always
after everybody else is gone.
That's what I mean, that's
Yeah,
why
so I have it too.
I went and sat in my car, and I had to have, them, or I could have them sit in my car, and I could sit outside, I suppose, but I don't know if I'm that kind. Okay, next one, who would like to read that? Sarah?
All Ellensburg Foursquare Church staff and volunteers working directly with children, youth, or vulnerable adults must view the child abuse video each year and sign off on all policies and protocols regarding the protection of children, youth, and vulnerable adults. When working with children, youth, and vulnerable adults, it is expected that physical boundaries will be respected. This includes safe hugs, one-arm side hugs. Hands should be restricted to head and shoulders, and no sitting on laps over 3 years. That's a long time to sit on a lap. Please refer to the appropriate touch document for more detail on Ellensburg Foursquare Church policy. All camps or retreats which involve children or youth should be attended by a ministry director or approved alternative.
Okay, so there's somebody ultimately in charge. I take that being in charge very seriously. Safety for the kids is my #1 priority. I want them to be saved. I want them to have a good time, but their safety is my #1 concern. Suspicion of abuse. Who would like to read this one? Okay, Vicki.
If the above policies are followed, we should be able to provide a safe environment. However, it is important that we have a protocol for situations in which there is suspicion of abuse or neglect. We will address 2 protocols: suspicion of abuse outside the church and suspicion of abuse inside the church. In the case of suspicion of abuse, we ask for the safety of the victim and reputation of all involved for them, that you keep information confidential and you only speak with those directly in leadership of the ministry. We also have established an email where you can communicate directly with EFC Child Safety Delegate to get direction. The email address is Safe
So-
Sanctuary at Ellisburg Foursquare.
As I had said before, it's real easy to remember because it's just Safe Sanctuary and it's ellensburgfoursquare.org. This will get it to Tabitha, who is a DSHS worker. That's her job, she's a social worker. So we thought she was the most appropriate person to have that go through. And then she'll investigate it further. Thankfully, she has had no emails to date, except for the one that tested to make sure that the email
It's
worked.
working, yeah.
That's a good thing. Really, really important that you don't talk about it to your buddies. Really important that you don't discuss it, even necessarily with your spouse, if you're here. I came upon a situation one day that made me really upset, and I probably didn't address it in the best way because anger got the best of me. Some people were standing in the hall discussing a situation that involved something that was going on at the church and that had or had not been handled appropriately, depending on your point of view, and they were standing in the hall discussing it. And I had to tell them, please, go in a private room if you want to discuss this. I may not have been that generous in the way that I addressed them, actually, but it's important not to let everybody hear.
It turns into gossip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to guard people. We have to care about people enough to not drag their name through the mud. Even if it's a true thing, we are not to gossip. Okay, who wants to read about symptoms? Okay.
Symptoms to watch for. No, one or more of these symptoms does not necessarily mean that a child, youth, or vulnerable adult is suffering from abuse. Physical abuse, bruises or welts, especially those that are unexplained and at unusual places on the body. Burns, unexplained fractures, abrasions, and lacerations. Neglect, severe
Malnourishment.
malnourishment, grossly inadequate hygiene care or lack of supervision. Emotional abuse behaviors which indicates apathy or depression is antisocial or hostile. Sexual abuse, itching, pain, bruises, or bleeding in genital or anal areas. If a child, youth, or vulnerable adult makes an
Allegation.
allegation of abuse, it should be taken seriously.
Okay, I gave you the one with all the hard words. Okay, bruises or welts, unexplained places in your body. That would be any soft tissue. Like I said, not like your shins or you fell down or you bruised or bumped your chin or scratched your face because you had a bike accident. Didn't you have a really bad bike accident once? No? But they're unusual. And then circular burns,
Cigarettes.
those you should pay attention to.
I've seen them.
Yeah, I learned how a match burned twice from my brother once. It's still with me. You can tell malnourishment, because kids, they're going to have bad teeth, they're going to have other things, and this is something that we just might notice from a kid that doesn't come to church regularly, or somebody who's a visitor for the first time. Inadequate hygiene, that's, if they smell really bad or their clothes are really dirty, it's obvious. Emotional abuse, if they seem apathetic or antisocial, they just don't want to join in at all. They'll sit in the corner and want to be alone the whole time. There are other reasons for it. Sometimes they just think the kids that are there are too young, or we have one child who has some social issues. And I let him sit in the back in the corner because he wants to be there, he wants to participate, but we know that he has that issue. And that's totally different than an abnormal behavior.
As far as hostility goes too, it could be the child is perpetuating the same kinds of treatment that he or she has had, and they become the bully, they become that angry one, and that sort of feeds the isolation, because other kids, who wants to be around somebody who's gonna be mean to them all the time?
And almost all bullies are people who have been bullied.
Yeah.
That's been their example, and so that's.
Well, most sexual predators have been preyed upon themselves, so it's,
The videos talk about that to a greater extent. If anybody makes an allegation, bring it to the next level. I mean, if they say flat out, this person did this to me, don't talk about it. Say, I'm gonna need to bring this up with Steve, or Maria, or Tabitha, and just leave it at that and let us take care of it from there. Okay, I think this is almost the last one. Oh, two more. Who'd like to read this one? All right, Karen?
Suspicion of abuse outside the church. In the case of suspicion of abuse outside the church, an incident report should be completed. The immediate supervisor and ministry director should be contacted, and the EFC child safety delegate should be consulted. Consulting with the EFC child safety delegate is important since there are some things that might present as evidence of abuse, but may not be the case. For example, Mongolian spots or
actinic purpura.
Thank you. The EFC Child Safety Delegate will determine the course of action to be enacted. Do not try to investigate. Asking too many questions or leading questions could hurt an investigation.
Okay, I'll admit ignorance. What are Mongolian spots, or the other thing that I'm not even gonna try to say?
Actinic purpura is the kind of a rash that's a purple spot, can look like a bruise, and so a Mongolian spot is a dark spot, like right above the buttock. Some babies are born with it. It tends to be more common in Black and Asian kids. It usually fades with age, but that's right where it is, and it's not an evidence. It's of abuse. It's just genetic.
Yeah. And some kids have the big red spots on their face or on their body. I know a young lady who has very severe psoriasis right now, and it could be misinterpreted as bruises. But we do have, in our Child Protective Safety Manual, we do have the investigative reports that we have to file with Foursquare should any allegation come up. Okay. Oh man, there's two more. All right, Rob.
Suspicion of abuse inside the church. Though we hope to never be in this situation as a church, it is important that we are prepared to handle these situations with integrity. The child safety delegate is to be contacted immediately to help navigate the situation. No decisions should be made without the direction of the child safety delegate. The ministry director should also be contacted when appropriate.
Can you just go on?
Sure. The child safety delegate is to immediately do the following. Contact the senior pastor. This should be done prior to any decision making or interviewing. The ministry director should be included in the process when it is appropriate. The Safe Sanctuary team should be called to assist in next steps, decision-making, investigation, and alerting government agencies as necessary. The person suspected or accused of abuse is to be immediately suspended from volunteering in any ministry at Ellensburg Foursquare Church. The purpose of this is to protect the potential victim, the person being accused, and the church. The potential victim is the highest priority. Protecting them and working with their family to care for them must be the basis for all decision-making in these situations.
So I would think that that would be self-evident. Although it's also our purpose to guard our volunteers against wrongful accusations. We have to, if there was an allegation, we would have to take it seriously. Not because we're mad at you or because we think you're a bad person or anything like that, but only because it can be a situation. And when we had the daycare here, there would always become some allegations. There would be. I think Lorraine said like 2 or 3 a year. And it just happened as a routine thing because people misinterpret or see something that they think is different than it should be or whatever, not because any wrongdoing was ever found to have happened, but just that sometimes there are accusations made, whether they're right or wrong. Again, Tabitha Snyder is our Safe Sanctuary delegate. I am the child person running children's ministries, and Brian is in charge of youth ministries. Okay, we're at the end. Qualifications to be sanctuary safe. That you have a current background check within the last 2 years. So those of you who don't have a current background check will be getting an email. It's all done by email through Planning Center. So that you watched all four Square Child and Youth Protection videos. Those are on the website.
Yeah, tell me where they are, because I've only seen one and
I have to figure out where they are.
okay.
Completed the quiz and signed off on the videos, so that's that. Reviewed and signed off on appropriate touch documents, which is one of the ones we read together. Reviewed and signed off on the child, youth, and vulnerable adult document, which is the other one we signed together. And that is it. You